Here are the top stories at this hour. Death toll increases to 5,300 in Libyan floods. Dozens dead after fire outbreak in Hanoi. Plus, 3 wounded after landmine explosion in Lebanon. Welcome to the World News on VOP TV. I am Kayla Abraham. Now, the International Organization for Migration in Libya has stated that at least 30,000 victims have been displaced in Derna. In a post on X, IOM added that 6,085 were known to have been displaced in other storm-hit areas, including Benghazi, with the number of deaths still hitting over 5,300 and still counting. Now, Libyans are coming to terms with the damage the flood has left behind, which is an unprecedented catastrophe. Now, dozens of persons have been killed in a fire at an apartment block in Vietnam's capital, Hanoi, with witnesses reporting screams from inside and a small boy thrown from the building on Wednesday. Now, witnesses disclosed that the fire started just before midnight on Tuesday in the parking floor of the 10-story building, an area packed with motorbikes. The official Vietnam news disclosed that authorities rescued about 70 people and rushed 54 to hospital, including dozens of dead. It was reported that at least 3 children were among the dead. Photos in the scene overnight showed flames and smoke billowing from barred balconies. The blaze was out by Wednesday morning as rescuers still struggled to access the building, which is down a narrow alley in a residential area of southwest Hanoi. The building's small balconies were surrounded by iron bars, with the apartment block having only a single exit and no emergency ladder on the outside. Around 150 people lived in the complex. Now, 2 landmines have exploded along the Lebanon-Syria border, wounding 3 Syrians trying to illegally cross into Lebanon on Wednesday. Now, the army disclosed that the mines exploded on the Syrian side of the border and that the wounded were rushed by the Lebanese Red Cross to a hospital in northern Lebanon for treatment. Over the past month, thousands of Syrian citizens fleeing worsening economic conditions in the war-torn country made it to Lebanon through illegal crossing points seeking a better life. But Lebanon is going through its own 4-year meltdown with a drowning economy, pinning its hopes on tourism and crumbling infrastructure where electricity and water cuts are widespread. State news disclosed that one of the victims, an 18-year-old, lost a leg, an arm, and suffered shrapnel wounds in the neck, leaving him in critical condition. Another young man also lost his leg, while the third, a 27-year-old, suffered some shrapnel wounds in the back. The Lebanese army disclosed in a statement on Tuesday that it prevented 1,250 Syrians from crossing into Lebanon this week alone. It said another 1,200 Syrians were prevented from reaching Lebanon the previous week. Lebanon hosts some 805,000 United Nations registered Syrian refugees, but officials estimate the actual number to be between 1.5 million and 2 million. Now, a luxury cruise ship carrying 206 people has remained stuck in a remote Greenland location on Wednesday after running aground earlier this week. The Danish military's Joint Arctic Command disclosed on Tuesday that the tide had failed to lift a 104-meter ocean explorer enough to free it. Australian cruise operator Aurora Expeditions stated that the passengers and crew remained safe on board. The ship ran aground on Monday while touring a national park some 1,400 kilometers northeast of Greenland's capital Nuuk, where the nearest rescue vessel is still days away. Photos taken by a Danish Air Force plane showed the ocean explorer sitting upright in calm waters with the sun shining. Meanwhile, a 5-month-old baby boy has drowned after he ended up in the water in a migrant boat tragedy off the Italian island of Lampedusa early on Wednesday. Now, according to an initial reconstruction, the fatal accident took place when the people aboard the boat he was on all moved to one side, causing several to fall into the water as a Coast Guard vessel approached to rescue it. The other people who fell in the water were saved. The mother, a minor from Guinea, who was traveling with other family members, was being given psychological support at Lampedusa's migrant hotspot. The baby's body has been taken to the mortuary at the island's Cala Pisana cemetery. It had been initially reported that the baby died in a chaotic landing operation in Lampedusa's port. Now, North Korea has fired 2 ballistic missiles off to its eastern coast as its leader Kim Jong-un and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin arrive in Russian spaceport Vostochny Cosmodrome for a potential summit where arms trading is most likely to dominate the agenda. Now, South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff stated that they have detected 2 short-range ballistic missiles fired into the East Sea hours before the potential Kim-Putin summit. It added that the missiles were fired from the Sunan area near Pyongyang. Smiling at one another, Kim and Putin shook hands at the Vostochny Cosmodrome. While it is unclear on why North Korea has fired a missile before the potential summit, Pyongyang has historically shown a tendency to use such launches as its strategic tool against the democratic world. The missile launch may signal the stronger ties between Pyongyang and Moscow against the United States and its allies in the region. Chun Swong-won, a former Security Strategy Secretary for South Korea's presidential office, stated that the launch marks the consent of comprehensive military collaboration between the two nations. This could imply a united front between the North Korean and Russian militaries against the trilateral security cooperation between the ROK, the US, and Japan. The Kim-Putin summit is widely viewed as an effort by Pyongyang and Moscow to further cement their ties in the face of international sanctions pressing their economies. Russia is under sanctions due to its aggression against Ukraine, while North Korea is sanctioned for its nuclear ambitions. Meanwhile, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has told Russian President Vladimir Putin that Pyongyang supports Moscow's sacred fight against the West as the two isolated leaders held a West summit in Russia on Wednesday amid concerns that they may advance on arms negotiation and bolster military cooperation. Now, according to Russian news, with the participation of delegations, Kim and Putin began talks at the Vostochny Space Center in Russia's Amur region after they shook hands and greeted each other for their first meeting in more than 4 years. Kim told Putin that Russia is waging a sacred fight against the West, adding that North Korea will work together with Russia to fight against imperialism. In an apparent reference to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Kim noted that he is supportive of all decisions made by Putin. Putin stated that he hopes to talk about economic cooperation, security situations on the Korean Peninsula, and humanitarian issues. In the run-up to the talks, Putin gave Kim a tour of the Vostochny Cosmodrome. The leaders also began a one-on-one meeting after holding the talks in an extended format. Now, China's Southern Airlines will be the first airline to operate direct flights to Samarkand from China starting from October 16. Marakanda, Uzbek company managing the Samarkand airport, announced the opening of a new flight to China's Urumqi. The departure from Samarkand is planned at midday on Monday. The return flight from Urumqi International Airport to Samarkand is scheduled for 11:20 on Sunday. All flights will be operated in modern Boeing 737-800 aircraft in a 2-class layout, business class and economy. The opening of direct flights will contribute to strengthening trade, economic and political ties between China and Uzbekistan. The number of foreign tourist visitors in Uzbekistan from January through December 2022 amounted to 5.2 million, which is 2.8 more than in the same period last year. Of these, the number of Chinese tourists visiting the country is 5,400. Now, Russia's defense ministry has stated that Ukraine launched 10 cruise missiles and 3 sea drones at shipyard in Sevastopol, home of Russia's Black Sea Fleet. A large fire broke out and 24 people were injured in Wednesday's morning's attack on the Russian-annexed Crimean Peninsula and the Black Sea. The strike appeared to be one of the biggest in recent weeks, even though Crimea, seized by Moscow in 2014, has been frequently targeted in the war. Kiev has stepped up attacks on Russian territory in recent months against the backdrop of its counteroffensive. Experts told News in September this strategy had psychology and military objectives, but warned it could backfire in significant ways for Ukraine. There was no immediate comment from Ukrainian officials, who rarely acknowledged Kiev's responsibility for attacks on Crimea or Russian regions. The Sevastopol shipyard is of strategic importance to Russia as a repair facility for its Black Sea fleet. Now, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has revamped his cabinet and the executive lineup of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party. The second cabinet reshuffle by Kishida since last year included changes to 13 out of 19 ministers, with 11 of them entering the cabinet for the first time. According to the lineup announced on Wednesday, Finance Minister Shunichi Suzuki, Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno, and Industry Minister Yasutoshi Nishimura, among 6 current cabinet members, remain in their post, with Kishida looking to maintain stability in key positions. Notably, the number of female cabinet members jumped to a record 5 from 2, with former Justice Minister Yoko Kamikawa, a veteran female lawmaker, named Foreign Minister to replace Yoshimasa Hayashi. Among the new faces, Minoru Kihara took the defense portfolio. Keizo Takemi and Shinako Tsushiya were appointed Health Minister and Reconstruction Minister respectively. Ichiro Miyashita replaced Tetsuro Nomura as Minister of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries. Earlier in the day, Kishida, as LDP head, also changed the ruling party's leadership. Regarding the LDP's 4 key party's executives, Toshimitsu Motegi and Koichi Haigadu were retained as Secretary General and Policy Chief respectively. Yuko Obuchi, the 49-year-old daughter of the late Prime Minister Keizo Obuchi, was appointed as Election Campaign Chief, replacing Hiroshi Moriyama, who became Chief of the General Council. Now, after recent deadly attacks in northern Mali, some people in Bamako say the government should consider restarting or increasing dialogue with the armed groups. There's been a resurgence of deadly violence in Mali's north in recent weeks, involving attacks by Islamist militants on civilians and security forces. The surges in violence comes UN peacemaking forces vacate their bases ahead of their full withdrawal at the end of the year. Armed groups from northern Mali claim they captured the key town of Bourem between Gao and Timbuktu before pulling out, fueling fears of the collapse of a peace deal between the ex-rebels and government forces. A senior army official said troops had regained control of its positions in Bourem with the help of air support. Now, the UN Human Rights Chief addressed on Tuesday, the 12th of September, at the 54th session of the Human Rights Council in Geneva. He told the Assembly that testimonies from people who had escaped the violence in Sudan underscore the scale and brutality of the conflicts between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces. Turk's office traveled to Chad and Ethiopia in June and July to gather first-hand information from people who had fled the violence in the country. Turk stated that both sides of the conflict had repeatedly failed to investigate serious human rights violations and violations of international humanitarian law, despite promising to do so, and that no one had been held to account. Sudan has been rocked by violence since mid-April, when tensions between the country's military led by General Abdel Fattah Burhan and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces commanded by General Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo burst into opening fight. Now, the expansion of industrial scale mines that extract cobalt and copper for rechargeable batteries has led to forced evictions and human rights abuses, including sexual assault, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Increasing demand for so-called clean energy technologies has also created a demand for specific metals, including copper and cobalt, essential for making lithium-ion batteries. These batteries are used for devices such as electric cars and mobile phones. The DRC has the world's largest reserves for cobalt and 7th largest reserves for copper Amnesty International stated this. Demand for cobalt is expected to reach 222,000 tons by 2025, triple that of 2010. Now, French President Emmanuel Macron is playing host to his Central African Republic counterpart in Paris. Faustin Archange Touadéra's visit is taking place against the backdrop of relaunching bilateral relations after years of tensions due to the rise of the Russian Wagner militia in the country. Touadéra spoke in the favor of a consolidation of relations with France, while explaining that his partnership with Russia, marked by the controversial presence of the Wagner militia in his country, was expected to continue. Touadéra has been nicknamed President Wagner from the name of the private Russian company whose hundreds of mercenaries landed in the Central African Republic in 2018 under the terms of a defense agreement signed with Russia. At the end of 2020, Touadéra, threatened by rebel offensive in Bangui, called on Moscow for help, and hundreds of other mercenaries landed and quickly helped push the armed groups out of most of the territories they controlled. The growing involvement of the Wagner Group in the Central African Republic led France to withdraw its last soldiers from the country at the end of 2022 against a backdrop of very degraded relations between Paris and Bangui. And finally, Vice President Kashim Shettima has departed Nigeria to represent President Bola Tinubu at the G77 China Leaders Summit in Havana, Cuba, holding from September 15 to 17. The Director of Information Office of the Vice President, Olushola Abiola, in a statement disclosed that Shettima would join other world leaders, including UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, at the summit. He disclosed that the summit would deliberate on development issues facing members mostly from the global south. Abiola also stated that the Havana summit would be hosted by the President of the Republic of Cuba, Miguel Diaz-Canel, in his capacity as chairman of the G77. The theme of the summit is current development challenges, the role of science, technology, and innovation. Furthermore, he stated that Shettima would be accompanied by Agriculture and Rural Development Minister Abubakar Kyari, his Innovation, Science and Technology counterpart Uche Naji, and the Permanent Secretary Ministry of Foreign Affairs Mr. Adamu Lamowa. And that's it on the World News and VOP TV. VOP Business Show coming up next. I am Kayla Abraham.